Merci pour m'avoir accordé la parole. Moi, je m'appelle Alphonse Muhindo. Je travaille pour le réseau pour la conservation et la réhabilitation des écosystèmes forestiers basé en République démocratique du Congo.
Je n'ai pas encore fait.
Je m'excuse, je disais que j'avais déjà décollé alors que les passagers n'étaient pas encore prêts. Alors, je disais que je m'appelle Alphonse Muhindo. Je travaille pour le réseau pour la conservation et la réhabilitation des écosystèmes forestiers, ainsi que le réseau CREF, basé en République démocratique du Congo. Je voudrais d'abord remercier tous les intervenants avec les idées qu'ils ont avancées, des idées assez riches qui nous permettront sûrement de nous engager vers l'économie verte à travers nos pays. Mais j'ai deux questions d'éclaircissement. La première est adressée au professeur, l'avant-dernier intervenant. J'ai l'impression qu'il n'a pas eu suffisamment de temps d'expliciter les composantes de l'économie verte. Il a juste parlé de la réduction de consommation de l'énergie, ainsi de suite. Mais je voudrais qu'il prenne un peu de temps pour nous expliquer les composantes de l'économie verte. La deuxième question s'adresse au troisième intervenant, j'ai oublié le nom, je m'excuse. Il a parlé des piliers du développement durable. En mettant le développement économique d'un côté, la protection de l'environnement de l'autre, et enfin le développement social. Mais tel que schématisé, je n'ai pas vu de lien entre ces trois. Est-ce qu'il y a des raisons pour ça ou bien c'est par omission? Parce qu'à mon avis, ça devrait avoir des intersections, comme on dit en mathématiques. Merci.
Thank you. Who would like to respond this? Would Mr. Dongman would like to respond?
Thank you. Just walking. Just one minute. Change the. Oh, he's ready.
Thank you. Thank you for your questions regarding the components of green economy. When I was in Rio Plus 20s, I have witnessed there are some different perception on green economy or green growth between developing and developed countries. In particular, among the three pillars of Rio Plus 20, as I mentioned, economic development, social cohesion, and the environmental protection. I found the developing countries that emphasize social cohesion, social equality, and economic growth rather than environmental protection. But developed countries or advanced countries emphasize the environmental protection because otherwise the earth will be suffering from the environmental degradation. The notion of a green economy described by the UNEP is the greening the economy based upon the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and environmental pollutions. So how can we achieve the green economy? But the Korean government emphasized and pursued the green growth policy, but still there are different views on the notion or concept of green growth, but green growth is a kind of a policy tools or means to achieve green economy. So there are many components of a green economy. During my presentation, I have pointed out two elements. Number one, as the other panelists mentioned, it's very important to have a visionary leadership because there are many policy tools, but how can the government or the policy leaders can pursue these visions? Second one I have emphasized is the cooperative or companies' engagement to achieve the green economy. But the point that I missed and the points that raised by the other panelists is the how can we engage the civil society or the other stakeholders or NGOs or civil groups to galvanize green economy or green growth for the future generations. Of course, there is no one size fits all policies. Each government, each country should take a different or tailor-made strategy to achieve a low-carbon green society. In that regard, as I explained, the Global Green Growth Institute transformed to a full-fledged international organization. GGI's role is to help developing countries to set up a tailored strategy adjusting to their economies, to their circumstances. So GGIS will now has been undertaking in-country project across the world in about more than 10 countries. So I think we should take some incremental approach. Of course, we should also raise the public awareness on green economy because it's not easy to harmonize economic growth with the environmental protection. But what is the more important is to achieve a low carbon green society in the future. One more thing that I would like to touch upon is we are talking about forest or mountain. The Korea's 70% of Korea's territory is covered by the mountain. So mountain is very good, important sectors for the nature preservation and environmental protection. But okay, I'll stop because I don't have a chance.
What was the second question, please? It was, I think it has been addressed.
It has been addressed. Yeah. So, sharp questions, please, and also sharp answers. Yes? Yes, please.
Thank you. My name is Spencer Thomas from Grenada. The question I would like to ask is, who ultimately benefits within country and among all the countries from greening the economy? That's the first question I would like to ask. Who ultimately benefits from that? And the second question is, for some countries, greening the economy is just a nice terminology because some countries may stand to lose the economy. So they may not even have an economy, for less a green one. So could you want to respond to that, please? Thank you.
Dr. Radford, would you like to end?
Thank you for the excellent question. I think if we are talking about green economy, ultimately human beings or the whole humankind is going to be benefited. Let us not go by the small area, small region, but as I understand your concern, onus is on the part of the countries who have now a lot of to spare. That's why one of the panelists, Madam Arju, she mentioned that we should have some green fund. Can we make use of the green fund? Of course, the Annex 1 countries or the countries who have been already developed. So not going to the further details. If we have certain fund, so in that process, as I understand your concern, that could be compensated with the help of that fund available, and ultimately the whole human being is going to benefit it. Thank you.
Is there any further addition from the panelists on that?
Let me add one point. Of course, the climate change is very important to address by the international community, but in particular the vulnerable groups, such as the children, and she mentioned the elder people and rural communities. It's very important to address their concerns because they are very vulnerable. So we should make some tailor-made strategies to protect the environment and to help those vulnerable groups. And of course, many developing countries need the financial support and the technical assistance by the developed countries to help them. So it's a common responsibility or collective responsibility, both for developed and developing countries to undertake this mission.
Please identify yourself.
My name is Khan Murshid. I'm from an NGO in Bangladesh. It's called Broti, and we work on various issues, including the environment and climate change, and human rights and governance and so on. I have just one or two points I'd like to make, Chairman, with your permission, and a question. The point is this: it's been made. It's the Western developed nations that are responsible to a very large degree for the state of the world that we have currently. And it's rapacious capitalism that has brought about this kind of, this kind of development, which has been both inequitable in the world, creating great gaps between the rich and the poor on the one hand, and on the other hand has led to massive environmental degradation right across the world. These are things that we have to recognize and understand. Now, the people who are not responsible for climate change are indeed poor communities. The mountain communities, the people who live there, who have looked after the mountains for generations, for perhaps thousands of years, are not the ones who created the problem. The people in poor farming communities are not the ones who created the problems that they are facing in terms of degradation of the environment. So we have to understand who the good guys are and who the bad guys are in this equation. It's important to do that because we have a responsibility to try and redress this imbalance that we currently face. And my question is this, that here we are at this major international conference, and one thing that I've tried to repeatedly speak about is the primacy of people, of local communities in the development process. And the very simple message that I think I would like us to try and coalesce around is this, that we cannot have development in the true sense of the word if we do not put people at the very center of that process, which means that people have to be engaged and involved in the decisions that affect their lives directly.
And be precise in the question, please.
My question is this: what would the panel suggest that we do in terms of bringing this essential message home to the IUCN in the first instance, and to the rest of the IUCN's partners in the international domain, as well as the national domain?
Dr. Deva, would you like to respond this?
I will try. First of all, I couldn't agree more that the local people have the first right over that area and what happens to the resources herewith. But country governments may not make decisions like that, as we have seen in a number of issues and circumstances. And country governments' decisions are moved by other things besides local concerns. We have also learned that. So what kind of models are we going to develop, or do we have to develop, which is going to like we say in our part of the world, that the stick is also not broken and the snake also dies. So, I mean, I'm not, but I don't want to kill snakes. Let me tell you that. It's just a saying. So the whole process of consultation, because till now I think the problem has been there have been no dialogues, and the typical attitude, especially in our part of the world, is that governments are all powerful. It's a feudal society. You know, the ones with the power know everything, and you know the local people don't know anything. I think to take that and turn it on its head, and understand and recognize that local people's voices are as important. And for that, people like you and I have a role to play. One is to make the local people feel, yes, I have the power. Because that is also a problem. You have the power, but you feel you don't have the power. And in our country, you can see that happening a lot now. In Nepal, we've had 10 years of conflict and we're in transition. And everybody has the power, sometimes maybe too much. But it is helping. And it is making governments think twice about what decisions they make without consulting the local people. So I think the strategy here is to inform local people about what is happening. And we have a case right here. You know, I mean, none of us knew what is happening. Maybe the local people also didn't know. So we have cases like that all over the world. So I think being informed, and that is a role that you and I have to play as civil society agents. Sometimes it's too late for anyone to decide or have a voice.
Thank you.
Can I add
Yes, please, please.
Thank you very
I would
much.
like to
Also,
hear
I
from
think
every parliament.
conservation is something we can't just take it for granted. We have to reintroduce reforestation, conservation for the sake of humanity. Therefore, I would strongly suggest that climate change fund, as it is, you know, we cannot, I don't think it's easy to create a new fund, but climate change fund should also address or help mitigate the problems that, you know, these poor farmers face, or who will plant these trees. Because what happens, you know, when there is deforestation, the floods are down and Bangladesh is affected. So it is not just the region itself. Globally, this is a great humanitarian thing that we could do, is to have climate change address the issues of also the mountains.
Dr. Sinha, please.
Let me first introduce myself. I'm P.R. Sinha, Director of Wildlife Institute of India, Dehradun. This is not a question addressed to the panelist. Just one quick comment. Since EC Mode is involved at a very large landscape level in the mountains and driving that agenda of sustainable growth in that region, so one has to be very, very clear about what green economy means, because there are so many terminologies floating around, like green smart infrastructure propounded by World Bank and all those things. So, and when we talk to the other stakeholders, like the agencies which are engaged in developing those infrastructure, we find that they have very little idea of what conservation means. Whether you take road sector, whether you take the dams, hydropower sector, because we have been engaged in doing this cumulative assessments in his state, Uttarakhand, and we have been interacting with people who are I mean, the departments concerned, hydropower department and others, and we find that the level of appreciation of the conservation concerns are extremely low, and this perhaps is true in most of the countries. Similarly, recently we organized some conference where we called the road sector people, and we found that they absolutely did not understand how it fragments the habitats. So the EC Mode, since it drives that agenda on such a large landscape where development is the buzzword and byword these days, that mountains must develop in terms of economy, we need to be very clear about what we are trying to understand, number one, and what are the tools. And my suggestion, quick suggestion, is that perhaps EC Mode need to take up the cause of what we call in our impact assessment, strategic environment assessments. SEAS concept should be driven, because even today In a country like India, let me tell you, at the highest level, nobody is taking this approach of cumulative assessments for various sectors as a tool for policy decisions. And let me tell you, these tools are effective tools. It gives you scenarios, and the scenarios very clearly tell you where you are losing on conservation aspect, where you are gaining. All these things are there. So, this is an appeal to you that through your agency, ECMOD, let us drive this agenda of the strategic environment assessment and cumulative assessments, which will take care of many of the concerns which the panelists have said. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Sinha, for this valuable suggestion. I think Mr. Rathore is here, who is the Board of Governors also in ECMOD system, and then I think this will be one of the points which will be discussed maybe later on. Thank you very much.